I think the pivotal moment was probably when ChatGPT came out, and the
Hmm.
world basically opened their eyes to what AI is today, which from a yeah, vector database perspective, I think it was not long after that the RAG paper came out, retrieval augmented generation, where people
Mm.
saw this immediate problem of like, oh, this model only has a certain set of knowledge that's in its training data, and of course, tool use and stuff was not a thing at the point at that time. So the only way to essentially get it to spit out truthful answers was to get your context basically from somewhere else and shove it into the context window and have the LLM ground its answer in that. And all of a sudden there was this demand for, oh, how do I, like, this is not structured search, this is completely unstructured, all I have is a prompt, how do I get the right context? And yeah, we happened to, so with everything that Bob just outlined, we basically had a fully working product at that point. Of course, we were not able to predict that ChatGPT would come and that RAC would become a thing, but the demand that put onto search engines, it was basically us and a few other sort of AI native players in that space that were ready to serve those kind of loads. And that is probably the moment that it started becoming mainstream, that it started taking off, and that people realized, oh wow, this is more than just a niche thing. Like this is going to power every single company, every single enterprise, every startup is going to need this.
Yeah, super cool. I think like there's like the ChatGPT boom, and then there was like the Claude Code and the OpenClaw boom that sort of happened like at the same time. And then I think
Mm.
just kind of recapping on the engineering offsite that we just had, it was crazy to see just, I guess, just how Claude Code pilled everyone is, how much it's
Yeah,
about like how are you
yeah,
using it.
yeah.
And I don't know if OpenClaw has seen the same. I don't mean to like just what I'm seeing, but I don't know if OpenClaw has stuck as much. But like I think these are like the next two booms.
Yeah, to
Yeah, but
me,
also,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead. Oh, yeah, no, I want to say also, you play also an important role in that, Connor, because we should not forget that the often when these new things happen, we kind of have like a front seat. So we see it maybe a little bit different, but you remember that you wrote that blog post. It's still on the website around like the feedback loops. They were like, hey, you can. I remember that I saw it and that I slacked you, and I was like, hey, there are people now storing stuff back so that these things, and then later that became like agentic and then OpenClaw and that kind of stuff, right? But we've seen all these inceptions of all these stages, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, on OpenClaw, on the OpenClaw wave and the agentic coding wave, to me, OpenClaw always felt like a bit of like the idea is the right one. The idea is autonomy. Like you just hand a task to an agent, you get out of this synchronous prompt user agent response kind of loop and have something that's running in the background, which I think was the right mindset, and it's obviously what we're all doing every day today. But the way it was basically presented as like, here's this YOLO mode thing that you cannot control, that's gonna buy stuff in your name, that's gonna enter into legal contracts, and by the way, it has access to your entire hard drive, to everything, and it's going to send out WhatsApp messages, and people can control it that way. It felt like a tiny bit too much out there. And then a few months later, now we're all basically rebuilding those kind of workflows with our coding agents. They're monitoring GitHub Commons, they're monitoring Slack channels, they're responding on Slack. They have these agent personalities, which I think was also a big thing to give an agent a personality, like not the personality that it has from its training, where it just says I'm Claude or I'm ChatGPT or I'm whatever GPT 5.6, but giving them personalities of like, hey, your trait is, I don't know, like I love my QA agents. Like I have one QA agent that basically says like, you assume that everyone else is lying and your job is to point out the lies. Like you're basically the lie detector, the adversarial QA that calls out everyone else's bullshit. And then it makes it a bit more human again. And of course it's everyone suddenly has access a massive team of agents. And I think this is coming back to your point of like seeing how Claude pilled everyone at Weaviate is. I think it's because two things. I think because from the beginning we were extremely open to like this is here to stay, and this is a transitioning that's happening, and if we're not leading this transition, we're basically behind on that transition. So I think top down, we always made clear that this is happening, but also bottom up, people just got so excited about the opportunities, how they can be more productive, how they can do more stuff, how they
Mm,
can improve reliability, how they can improve tests, how things that seemed impossible before are now just a prompt away. Like experimenting is so easy. You have this crazy idea, and you would sit for a week and draw architecture diagrams and everything. And today it's just throw it in a prompt and have it out there. And if it works, then all of a sudden, like, we have this discussion of like, hey, we have a prototype now. Should we actually get this into production? And this is just, to me, it's such a shift in how we're addressing software engineering that I would have just never expected that. And that to me is I think a similar level of this ChatGPT style transformation,
mm,
because it for a software engineer, I think it affects their day to day in a way that ChatGPT never could, or that just standard LLMs never could. Because of course you would use them, you would integrate them into your day to day, but they would not necessarily change your day to day. And I think right now it's completely changed. And hopefully most people or not hopefully, but thankfully most people at Weaviate are really embracing this change. Of course, there's always going to be a few skeptics here and there, who are maybe like lagging a bit behind on the adoption. But most people are really want to drive this change forward. And to me, that is how an engineering org of the future needs to look like.
Yeah, super cool. And I know, Bob, you talk a lot about the like tipping point of these technologies, of like when you finally are like, all right, I'm going to trust it. And I think that's super interesting with software engineering, when people are finally going. Like, I know Dan from the Weavy Agents team is just now saying, okay, fine, I'll use Claude Code and have some holdouts. I just personally finally tipping point on the Mac Mini. It's coming August 5th to the 12th. It's so backordered that to get like a good one, you're talking about like the end of September, but finally made it.
Wow.
yeah. No, it's interesting how uh, it's just interesting how you see people adopt these kind of things, right? So it's funny that you just mentioned, like, so sometimes people are even building agents, but then still the traditional way, which is it's interesting, right? So it's like I'm always interested in the psychology behind that. So what is that time? We had that also early days at Weaviate, like the very early days, right? That people, I remember that I was in conversations, and this is really early. So this is, yeah, well, many years ago, and that there was a company that was not willing to buy from us, because they were like, yeah, if you have database, it needs to, it's like we were not going to buy database from a company with like 6 or 7 people.
They were
No, that
probably
was
right at that point.
but that was a thing, right? So it's like it's a and that's a similar adoption curve, like now coding with AI and so on and so forth. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, maybe coming more into the Weaviate questions. Another question, submitted question.